You've done the work. You know your attachment style. You've memorized the green flags and red flags. You can spot a narcissist 3 dates in. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, gone to therapy, worked on your communication skills, and yet, here you are, still single, still swiping, still wondering why the same patterns keep showing up in different faces. Here's what Carl Jung would tell you. You're looking in the wrong direction. The conscious mind believes it knows what it wants. It has a list, a type, standards, deal breakers. But beneath that curated self-awareness, there's an entire underground theater running a completely different show. Jung called it the unconscious, and it's not just influencing your love life, it's directing it. Writing the script, casting the characters, and you don't even have a seat in the production meeting. Think about your last situationship, the one that made no logical sense. You knew from week 2 it wouldn't work. Your friend saw it, you saw it. And yet, you stayed for months, convincing yourself that this time would be different, that if you just communicated better or loved harder or waited longer, the person would change. That wasn't hope. That was your unconscious, running an algorithm you didn't write, trying to resolve something that had nothing to do with the person in front of you. Jung spent decades mapping the architecture of the human psyche, and what he found was this. We don't choose our romantic patterns. Our wounds choose them for us. The parts of ourselves we've rejected, the needs we've buried, the parent we're still trying to win over, these forces operate beneath conscious awareness, magnetizing us toward people and situations that feel familiar, even when familiar means painful. This isn't about blaming your childhood or pathologizing your singleness. This is about understanding the invisible currents pulling you off course. Because here's the uncomfortable truth Jung would make you face. You might be single not because you haven't met the right person, but because some part of you is actively preventing it. Not consciously, not intentionally, but powerfully. The unconscious doesn't care about your dating app bio or your vision board. It cares about completing unfinished business. It cares about maintaining the identity you constructed to survive your early life, even if that identity is now the cage keeping you from connection. And until you turn around and face what's operating in the shadows, you'll keep repeating the same story with different actors, wondering why the script never changes. I used to think self-awareness was enough, that if I could just name my issues, understand my triggers, articulate my needs, I'd crack the code. But Jung's work revealed something more challenging. The parts of yourself you're most certain about are often the parts serving as the best disguise for what's actually running the show. You think you want emotional availability, but your unconscious is still trying to win over the emotionally unavailable parent. You think you want partnership, but some buried part of you associates intimacy with annihilation. The real work isn't out there in the dating pool. It's in here, in the archaeology of your own psyche. And it starts with a question Jung would ask you to sit with. What if the person you're waiting for is blocked not by bad luck or bad timing, but by the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to meet? This isn't a motivational speech about manifesting love. This is a map to the unconscious barriers that have been sabotaging you from the inside. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. But that's when the real transformation begins, not in finding someone, but in becoming someone who's actually free to be found. Jung had a concept that most people resist until it slaps them in the face: the shadow. It's not the villain in your story. It's not your dark side in some dramatic sense. The shadow is simply everything you decided, usually before age 7, was too dangerous, too shameful, too unacceptable to be part of your conscious identity. And here's the twist. Whatever you've exiled to the shadow doesn't disappear. It runs interference in your relationships until you bring it into the light. Let me make this concrete. If you grew up in a household where anger was dangerous, where expressing frustration led to rejection or rage or silent treatment, you likely banished your own anger to the shadow. You became the peacekeeper, the accommodating one, the person who never causes problems. And on the surface, that's an asset. You're easy to be with. Low maintenance, understanding. but your unconscious knows the truth. You're not without anger. You've just buried it. And so, what happens? You magnetize partners who express anger for you. The volatile ones, the explosive ones, the ones everyone warns you about. You tell yourself you're trying to heal them, help them, calm them. But Jung would say, you're outsourcing the anger you refuse to own. They're acting out your shadow while you maintain your identity as the peaceful one. And the relationship becomes a battleground for a war you won't admit you're fighting. This pattern shows up everywhere. If you rejected your neediness, you'll attract clingy partners and feel suffocated while secretly getting to experience dependency through them without owning it yourself. If you rejected your power, you'll attract controlling partners and feel victimized while secretly getting to experience dominance by proxy. If you rejected your sexuality, you'll attract partners who are overly sexual and feel objectified while secretly getting to touch that disowned energy without claiming it. The shadow doesn't just influence who you choose, it influences who chooses you, because there's a recognition that happens beneath conscious awareness. Your shadow sends out a signal, and someone else's shadow receives it. You meet across what you've both disowned, and you call it chemistry. Soulmates, meant to be. But really, you've just found someone whose wounds fit yours like a lock and key, and now you're both stuck trying to open doors that lead nowhere. Jung called this shadow projection, and it's the silent architect of every toxic dynamic you've ever stayed in too long. You're not seeing the person. You're seeing your own rejected material reflected back. And the intensity you feel isn't love, it's the unconscious recognizing its missing pieces. I spent years choosing emotionally unavailable men and couldn't understand why. I'd tell myself each one was different. This one was just busy. That one was just healing from his ex. This one just needed time. The common denominator was my own disowned need for autonomy. I'd rejected my independence to become the good girlfriend, and so I kept finding men who would do the rejecting for me by staying distant. They weren't the problem. They were the symptom of a shadow I refused to face. The moment this becomes conscious, you'll feel it like a punch. You'll start seeing your patterns not as bad luck, but as perfect mirrors. Every person who hurt you was reflecting something you hadn't integrated. Every relationship that failed was showing you the work you needed to do. Not because you deserved pain, but because the psyche will do everything it can to make you whole, even if that means putting the same lesson in front of you over and over until you finally stop blaming the teacher and open the textbook. So, here's what Jung would ask you. What quality do you despise in your exes? What trait shows up again and again that makes you feel like a victim of circumstance? Write it down. Because that quality, the one you're certain you don't possess, the one you find repulsive, that's your shadow knocking. And until you open the door and own that part of yourself, you'll keep meeting it in others, convinced each time that this is something happening to you, not through you. The work isn't to find someone without those traits. The work is to reclaim those traits in yourself so you stop needing someone else to carry them for you. That's when your dating pool changes. Not because you manifested differently, but because you stopped broadcasting the signal that attracted the same story with a different face. Every person carries an internal image of the opposite sex built from a lifetime of experiences, observations, and unmet needs. Jung called this the anima in men and the animus in women, though the concept extends beyond binary gender. This inner figure isn't neutral. It's not just a template. It's alive in your psyche, colored by your earliest relationships, and it's the lens through which you see every potential partner. The problem? Most people never realize they're dating through a filter built in childhood, projecting onto real humans the exact shape of what they needed or feared from a parent. If your father was distant, emotionally unavailable, withholding approval, your animus likely carries that imprint. You'll be drawn to men who make you work for their attention, who keep you guessing, who give just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to feel secure. You'll call it passion, mystery, challenge. But Jung would say, you're trying to win your father's love through a proxy. And because your father never gave you what you needed, neither will these men. The unconscious doesn't want resolution. It wants repetition. It wants another chance to get it right, even though the setup guarantees failure. If your mother was critical, controlling, or conditional in her love, your animus might carry an image of femininity as something smothering, something that demands performance, something unsafe. You might find yourself pulling away the moment a woman gets too close, feeling suffocated by affection, convinced that intimacy equals losing yourself. You're not rejecting her. You're rejecting the ghost of your mother that your psyche has projected onto her face. And here's where it gets layered. You don't just project the parent, you also become the parent. If your father was absent, you might unconsciously choose partners you can abandon, replaying the story, but this time with you in the powerful position. If your mother was overly involved, you might become the smothering partner, desperate to control connection, because autonomy once meant losing love. This is the double bind Jung identified. We simultaneously seek to heal the original wound and repeat it. We want the parent to finally show up and love us correctly, but we also want to be the parent to prove we can do it better, to take back the power we lost. And the person you're dating becomes the stage for this unconscious reenactment. Neither of you aware that you're performing roles written decades before you met. Think about your last breakup, the one where you felt blindsided, confused, convinced you did everything right. Now ask yourself, were you seeing them? Or were you seeing the version your anima or animus expected them to be? Were you responding to who they actually were, or to the parental figure your unconscious dressed them up as? The anima and animus aren't just about romantic relationships. They're about how you relate to otherness, to what's foreign in yourself. Jung believed that men carry a feminine soul and women carry a masculine soul, and the journey to wholeness requires integrating these inner figures. But most people don't do that work. They externalize it. They find someone who embodies their disowned masculine or feminine energy and try to complete themselves through the relationship. And when the projection inevitably crumbles, when the real person reveals themselves to be human, flawed, separate from your fantasy, the relationship implodes. Not because they disappointed you, but because they were never the deity you made them into. I used to wonder why I kept choosing men who were brilliant but emotionally stunted. Artists, intellectuals, men with rich inner worlds, but no ability to show up in practical, consistent ways. It felt like a coincidence until I mapped it back to my father, a dreamer, a philosopher, someone who lived in abstractions while the tangible world fell apart around him. My animus was sculpted in his image, and I was seeking him in every man I met, hoping this time he'd also be present, grounded, reliable. But I wasn't choosing men with that capacity. I was choosing men who confirmed the original imprint and then blaming them for being exactly what my unconscious was magnetized to. The path forward isn't to find a partner without your parental imprints, it's to make those imprints conscious. To see when you're projecting, when you're reenacting, when you're demanding that a partner heal a wound they didn't create and can't fix. That's when choice becomes possible. Not before. You have a face you show the world. Jung called it the persona, the mask, the role, the carefully curated version of yourself that wins approval, maintains belonging, keeps you safe. It's not fake, exactly. It's adaptive. You developed it for survival. Maybe you became the caretaker because being needed meant being loved. Maybe you became the independent one because vulnerability meant rejection. Maybe you became the fun, low-maintenance partner because having needs was dangerous. Here's the problem. The persona that protects you from rejection also protects you from connection. You can't build intimacy through a mask. Real relationship requires the parts of you that are messy, uncertain, in process. It requires needs and edges. It requires the version of yourself that isn't performing. But if you've spent a lifetime equating your worth with your persona, the idea of showing up without it feels like annihilation. So you date through the mask, you perform compatibility, you curate reliability, and you wonder why every relationship feels hollow, why no one really sees you, why you're lonelier in partnership than you were alone. Jung was clear about this. The persona is necessary for functioning in the world, but it's deadly to the soul when it becomes your only identity. And in romantic relationships, the persona creates a specific trap. You attract people who are attracted to your mask, not yourself. They fall in love with the role you play. The caretaker, the chill girl. The provider, the manic pixie dream girl. The emotionally available king. And you feel loved, but it's not you being loved. It's your performance being applauded. Then, inevitably, the mask cracks. You get tired, you get needy, you get angry, or scared, or selfish, or human, and the relationship implodes because it was never built on your actual self. It was built on the sanitized, optimized version you thought would be acceptable. The person leaves, and you blame yourself for not maintaining the performance well enough, when the real tragedy is that you never gave them the chance to love the person underneath. If you're wondering why you feel exhausted in dating, this is often why. You're working 2 jobs, being yourself, and managing the impression of yourself. You're monitoring every text, every reaction, every moment for signs that you're being too much or not enough. You're shape-shifting to match what you think they want, and then resenting them for not loving you authentically. But Jung would ask, how can they love you authentically when you've never shown up authentically? The persona also keeps you single through a subtler mechanism. It attracts relationships that don't threaten your mask. If your persona is built on being fine, needing nothing, having it all together, you'll unconsciously choose partners who don't push you to be vulnerable. You'll choose surface-level connections where emotional depth never becomes required. You'll choose people who are fine with your mask because they're hiding behind one too. And you'll call it compatibility when really it's just 2 performances nodding at each other across a room, both terrified that if the lights come on, the audience will leave. I've watched people self-sabotage promising relationships the moment their persona was at risk, the moment someone asked for real vulnerability, real need, real presence. The moment the performance became unsustainable, they'd pick fights, ghost, cheat, manufacture distance, anything to avoid the exposure of being seen without the mask. Not because they didn't want love, but because love required the one thing the persona was designed to prevent, being known as they actually are, not as they've learned to present. So, if you're single, ask yourself, who's doing your dating? Is it you or the version of you that you think is acceptable? Are you looking for someone who can love your complexity, or someone who will confirm that your mask is working? Because as long as the persona is in the driver's seat, you'll keep creating relationships that feel safe but empty, comfortable but distant, pleasant but not true. The real question Jung would pose is this: are you brave enough to show up as you are, undefended, and risk the rejection of your actual self? Because that's the only risk worth taking. Anything else is just loneliness with company. Jung didn't talk about finding your soulmate. He talked about becoming whole. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating all the fragmented, rejected, disowned parts of yourself into a coherent, conscious self. And here's what the self-help industry won't tell you. You don't attract healthy love by becoming perfect. You attract it by becoming whole. Those are not the same thing. Wholeness includes your shadow. It includes your wounds. It includes the parts of you that are still learning, still healing, still carrying pain from decades ago. Wholeness doesn't mean you fixed yourself. It means you've stopped fragmenting yourself to meet someone else's standard of acceptable. Most dating advice operates from a scarcity model. You're broken, so fix these 10 things, then you'll be worthy of love. Jung's model is different. He'd say, you're already complete, but you've cut yourself into pieces to survive, and now you're trying to build a relationship with only half of yourself online. The other half, the shadow, the wounded child, the disowned anger, the unapproved need is running the show from backstage, sabotaging every connection because it refuses to be left out anymore. Individuation in the context of relationships means this: you stop trying to be lovable and start being whole. You stop performing the parts of yourself that win approval and start owning the parts that don't. You stop waiting for a partner to complete you and start completing yourself. Not in the love yourself first bumper sticker way, but in the deep, uncomfortable way where you turn toward everything you've been running from and say, "You're mine too." This process is not pretty. It doesn't happen in a weekend workshop or a breakthrough therapy session. Jung described it as the work of the second half of life, and he meant it. It's the slow, often painful dismantling of the false self you built to survive childhood, and the even slower construction of a true self that can handle real intimacy. Here's what that looks like in practice. You start noticing your projections. When you feel intense attraction or intense repulsion, you pause and ask, what part of me is this person carrying? You stop blaming your exes for being broken and start asking what they were reflecting about your own unmet needs. You stop waiting for the perfect partner and start doing the work to become someone who can actually sustain healthy partnership, not because you're flawed, but because the psyche requires consciousness before it allows connection. You bring your shadow into dialogue. You sit with your anger, your neediness, your selfishness, your fear not to indulge them, but to understand them. You ask what they're protecting, what they need, what original wound they're trying to prevent, and instead of exiling them, you integrate them. You become someone who can be angry and boundaried, needy and asking, selfish and self-honoring, afraid and moving forward anyway. You examine your parental imprints. You write them down. You see them clearly. You stop expecting a partner to heal them and start grieving what you didn't get. That's the part no one tells you. Individuation requires mourning. Mourning the parent who couldn't show up. Mourning the childhood you needed. Mourning the fantasy that someone will come along and retroactively make it right. Only after that grief can you meet a partner as an adult meeting another adult, rather than a wounded child hoping this time the parent will finally stay. You dissolve the persona, slowly, in safe relationships. You practice showing up without the mask. You say, "I need something," when every cell in your body is screaming that need is dangerous. You express anger when your conditioning says anger equals abandonment. You let yourself be uncertain, inconsistent, human, and you notice who stays, not who applauds your performance, but who meets your actual self with acceptance. This is the work that makes you available for real love, not because you've become some enlightened being, but because you've stopped running from yourself. And when you stop running from yourself, you stop attracting partners who require you to keep running. The chaos ends, the intensity ends, the drama ends. Not because you've found someone less damaged, but because you've done the work to integrate your own damage so it no longer needs to be acted out in your relationships. Jung believed that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness, even when it looks like self-destruction. Every failed relationship is the unconscious trying to show you what still needs integration. Every repetition is an invitation to consciousness. Every painful ending is a push toward individuation. The question is, will you do the work, or will you keep blaming the cast of characters in a story you're unconsciously writing? Because here's the truth that will set you free. You're not single because you're broken. You're single because your psyche won't let you settle for anything less than a relationship that honors your wholeness. And until you become whole, that relationship isn't possible. Not because you don't deserve it, but because you can't sustain it. You're at a choice point. You can close this video and go back to swiping, back to blaming your singleness on bad timing or shallow dating pools or commitment phobes. That's the comfortable path. It keeps you in the victim position, which is painful but familiar. Or you can take Jung's invitation, turn inward, face the unconscious material that's been running your romantic life, and do the hard, slow work of integration. Integration doesn't mean you'll suddenly manifest a perfect partner. It means you'll stop being at war with yourself, and that shift changes everything. You'll stop attracting relationships built on projection and start recognizing people who can meet you in reality. You'll stop repeating the same dynamics and start creating space for something new. You'll stop performing for love and start offering your actual self, trusting that the right person will recognize you, not your highlight reel, not your trauma response, not your survival mask, but you. Here's what this path requires practically. First, get into depth therapy. Not coaching, not a 6-week program. Real psychodynamic or Jungian-oriented therapy with someone who understands the unconscious and isn't afraid to go there with you. This work can't be done through journaling prompts and affirmations. It requires a relationship with someone who can hold space for your shadow, reflect your projections back to you, and stay present while you dismantle the persona you've been hiding behind. Second, study your patterns like they're a language you need to learn. Write out every significant relationship. Note the commonalities. Look for the themes. Where do you abandon yourself? Where do you overfunction? Where do you make yourself small? Where do you choose people who can't meet you? These aren't random. They're breadcrumbs leading back to the original wound, and until you follow them all the way back, you'll keep starting the trail over. Third, practice shadow work actively. When you feel a strong reaction to someone, attraction or repulsion, pause and ask, what part of me is this about? Journal on it. Be ruthlessly honest. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about becoming conscious of the underground machinery so you can make actual choices instead of repeating unconscious patterns. Fourth, sit with your aloneness, not as a punishment, but as a necessary part of the process. Jung believed that individuation requires solitude. You can't hear your own psyche if you're constantly filling the silence with dates, distractions, or the noise of shallow connection. Being single isn't a problem to solve. It's a container for the work you need to do. So stop running from it. Stop treating it like a disease. Let it be what it is, a spacious, difficult, ultimately transformative season of becoming whole. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop desperately needing a relationship is often the moment you become capable of having a real one. Not because the universe rewards you for not wanting, but because you finally stopped outsourcing your wholeness to another person. You've stopped demanding that someone complete you, heal you, save you. And from that place of sufficiency, not perfection, but sufficiency, you can meet someone as an equal, not as a savior or a project. This isn't the fairy tale you were sold. This is better. This is real. This is the path where you stop being a victim of your unconscious patterns and start authoring your own story, where you stop waiting for someone to choose you and start choosing yourself, all of yourself, shadow included. So, here's my challenge to you. Take one pattern you've identified in this video and sit with it for the next week. Write about it. Feel it. Ask what it's protecting. Ask what it needs. Ask what childhood wound it's trying to prevent. And if you do that work, really do it. Not just intellectually, but in your body, in your journal, in your therapy sessions, you'll start to feel the shift. Not overnight, but steadily, powerfully, irreversibly. And when you're ready, when you've done enough of the work to show up whole, the right relationship won't feel like chaos. It won't feel like a performance. It won't feel like you're trying to solve an equation with missing variables. It will feel like recognition, like meeting, like two people who've done the work to become themselves finally finding each other. That's the promise of Jung's work. Not easy love, but real love. Not perfect partnership, but conscious partnership. Not someone to complete you, but someone to witness you in your completeness. Now go do the work. Your future self and your future partner will thank you.